So we have been on a journey this month, haven't we? A journey of learning to live with presence in an ever-changing, uncertain, and sometimes pretty chaotic world. Whether that is the big world or whether it's our individual world, learning to live with greater presence. And so today I want to talk about the topic of faith. I'm using a phrase that I think really is a helpful phrase for a different kind of faith. And it is the idea of future-proofing our faith. Future-proofing our faith. Say that with me. Future-proofing our faith. You know, faith is something that people, I think, struggle with. They struggle with it because they don't quite understand how it works or how to deepen it or how to nurture it. I can remember growing up when people would ask, "What faith are you?" They don't ask that so much anymore, but there was a time that you were asked, "What faith are you?" And it meant, "What religion are you?" And it was a way of trying to understand what you believe. And to me, faith is much more than what we believe. It is absolutely a spiritual orientation toward life. And this idea of future-proofing our faith, to me, is the idea of building a faith that is resilient enough to meet the demands of our lives that we're facing today, whatever the issues are that we are looking at individually or collectively. And so how do we do that? How do we develop and maintain and deepen a faith that is big enough to deal with the issues in the world today? And to me, that's the idea of future-proofing our faith. When you think of future-proofing, it means developing something, an object or a system or a set of skills that's going to be able to stand the test of time, rather than planned obsolescence. Future-proofing it. How do we build a faith that's going to be able to stand the test of time? Charles Fillmore, who was the co-founder of Unity, wrote these words in a book that he wrote. He wrote many books, but this book was called Christian Healing. And he wrote, "The world is going through a great change, and it is a change for the better. We are beginning to see that the old ways of thinking and living are not the best ways." Would you not say that that's true? I struggle with it, though, because he wrote that more than 100 years ago. And we still seem to kind of be in the same place. We still seem to kind of be in the same place. The world is going through a great change. Would you not agree with that? I think we are going through a great change. And it is a change for the better. Sometimes it's hard to hold on to that, maybe. It's a change for the better. We're beginning to see that the old ways of thinking and living are not the best ways. I think that is also true of the world today. That we're beginning to see that the old ways of thinking and living are not the best ways. And when we're in a cycle, an evolutionary cycle like that, where we're beginning individually and collectively to look at some of the old ways, the old systems, the old structures, and to realize that they're not working the way they once did, and we need to bring forth new systems, new ways, new structures to meet where we are today. What happens in the process of that old starting to not work anymore is something that we often will refer to as chaotic. It's chaos. I remember hearing the great philanthropist and author and teacher Lynn Twist, one of my favorite spiritual teachers on the planet, use the phrase, "We are living in a time in which we are needing to hospice that which is dying and midwife that which is trying to be born." Take that in for a moment. It's a powerful idea that we are in a time that is requiring of us the ability to hospice that which is dying. How many of you are familiar with the incredible work that hospice does? Probably most everybody now. They are there to help families in a time of transitioning a loved one. They're there to help the individual who is making the transition, to provide comfort and understanding and love and support, to hospice that which is dying, and to midwife that which is trying to be born new. When you think of midwifing, it is the process of welcoming in that new life, knowing full well that the very process of birth itself is a pretty dangerous process. It can be a very complicated process. And so as we look at maybe significant changes that we're dealing with personally in our lives, or we look at the world that seems to be changing so much, and things seem to be falling apart, and things seem to be chaotic, and it seems that there's a lot of uncertainty, it's important, I think, for us to be able to hold both parts of that dynamic, to be able to hospice with some love and care, recognizing that a lot of old systems and structures, yes, they serve their purpose and their time and their place, but they're not working the way they need to be working now, and they need to be let go so something new can come forward. As I say that, I'm thinking of a poster I saw many years ago of a cat hanging on a bar, and the caption was, "Everything I ever let go of had claw marks on it." That's not hospicing the old, nor is it midwifing the new. Future-proofing our faith as old systems and structures are crumbling, peace is found by stepping through the ruins of the old into a more expansive and integral new faith. We can say, are things falling apart, or are they breaking open? Think about that for a moment. Are things falling apart, or are they breaking open? Take it in personally for a moment. Think about a time in your life that was a really big time of change. Maybe it was the ending of a relationship, or of a business, or of a lifestyle that you once enjoyed. Looking at it through a certain lens, we might say that that was a time of my life felt like it was falling apart. And indeed, maybe those words fit. However, what also fits is being able to see that at the same time something is falling apart is the opportunity for something new to come forward, because there is a breaking open. There is a breaking open. This is springtime. It's a time that people like me who have gardening as a hobby are out buying stuff for their gardens and putting their hands in the soil and doing dirt therapy and breaking apart the soil, the clumping of it, so that it is more porous and open, so that when a seed is planted in it, it has a chance to take root and grow. Hospicing that which is dying, midwifing that which is born anew. Chaos often comes from the old dying off, whether we're talking about systems in our global world, or we're talking about stuff close at home and changes in our lives personally. Peace comes from trusting the new being born. Take that in for a moment. Peace comes from trusting the new being born. The new being born. Have you ever watched a trapeze artist? I don't even know if they have circuses anymore, but I can remember as a kid going to a circus once or twice and seeing the trapeze artist. Am I the only one that remembers that, right? Seeing a trapeze artist. And it always amazed me. What did it take to swing out, to let go of that one bar and grab onto the next? And of course, the most difficult time, the most challenging time, is that in-between time, the letting go of the one bar and grabbing a hold of the new bar. Peace is found in the letting go and the trusting that there is grace, that there is a force that will hold us in that in-between space. To me, that's what grace is. That which holds us in that in-between space. Ken Wilber, how many of you have done any reading or studying of Ken Wilber? Great, to me, I find him quite complicated. When you sit down to read a Ken Wilber book, you better really be paying attention. He's considered a philosopher. He comes out of the Buddhist tradition. He's written numerous books. One of the most recent one is Integral Spirituality. He's wrote a book years ago called The History of Everything. He has this model and this dynamic for trying to be able to explain consciousness individually and globally, and why the world is the way it is and how it came to be. Anybody who does that is a pretty heady kind of person, but a fascinating writer and teacher. And Ken Wilber has this through line in much of his teaching, the through line being the idea of transcend and include. Say that with me. Transcend and include. Transcend and include. He approaches systems in a way by saying that we don't have to fight the old world. We can include the lessons and transcend the chaos. So the idea here, whether, again, individually or collectively, is that we are including the lessons that hopefully we are learning individually and as a society. We are including what we are learning, and we are transcending the chaos of the times. Does that make sense? It's the same idea, I think, that Lynn Twist speaks of when she says, to hospice that which is dying, and to midwife, to welcome that which is trying to be born anew. To transcend and include, to include and transcend. We realize that faith isn't a static state we have to guard. Instead, faith is the courage to keep walking into the unknown. The courage to keep walking into the unknown. The courage to keep taking a step before you, even if your human mind would like to know not just a step before you, but all the other ones as well. That's the way my human mind works. I would love to know all of the steps and have a few reassurances along the way that everything's going to be okay. But faith is taking the step before you and continuing even when you can't see all the way down the road. I don't think we're meant to see all the way down the road. I've written in my notes that faith is a muscle of trust, a muscle of trust. Strengthening faith by practicing holy curiosity. Say that with me. Holy curiosity. Just notice for yourself when you say that word or those words, holy curiosity, where does your mind go? What are you thinking or what are you feeling? Where does it land in your body? Holy curiosity. Little kids have that in abundance, don't they? Holy curiosity. They're open. They want to understand. They want to learn. They want to experience. We strengthen faith, I think, as adults by practicing once again some of that holy curiosity. Every time the world changes, or we learn something new that challenges our old view, we want to exercise the trust that God or Spirit is in that new place waiting for us. Breathe into that for a moment. When we're anticipating in our own life a change, when things might feel chaotic in our life personally, and we're uncertain about what's going to come about, faith is trusting that God's Spirit, by whatever name you call that, is waiting for us in that new space as well. When we can hold that, I think it makes it so much easier for us to step into that unknown because we know that we're met with a presence and power that is greater than us. How do we know that? If we believe that there is just one presence and one power in the universe, God the good, omnipotent, then right where we are and wherever we're going to be, that presence and power is there as well, meeting us, if you will. When we can hold that, when we can remember that, it makes it so much easier to move into whatever is uncertain in our lives, whether it's the uncertainty of the work that we're trying to find, or the uncertainty of a health challenge we've just been told we've had, or the uncertainty of a financial dilemma we're going with, or we're looking for work, whatever it may be. If we can remind ourselves, just as the presence of Spirit, the power of Spirit is right where I am now, so too it is where I am stepping into. That to me is to build a resilient faith, a future-proof faith, a faith that is big enough to meet whatever it is that comes into our path. As I was doing a little more work on my talk yesterday, I was running an errand somewhere, and I started, instead of having music on in my car or listening to the news, I thought, let me ask myself some questions about faith, in addition to what I had already put together in the lesson. And I challenged myself to ask myself, well, what helps me maintain my faith? And so I'm going to share some of that with you, and it may be helpful to you, or it may put you on your own journey of what helps you to maintain and deepen your faith. And some of the ideas or things that came to me is the natural world helps me to feel more faithful about the world itself, the natural world, its abundance, its constant replenishment, that the seasons always come and go, the cycles of nature helps me. A big one for me is the very fact of life itself. Our life, your life, our life. That life exists at all. That there is something, us and a lot of somethings, something rather than nothing. To me, that is probably the ultimate mystery of life. That puts me right in a place of mysticism. That there is something rather than nothing. Another for me is the upward evolutionary spiral of life. Whether you study the evolution of animals, or you study the long arc of history of humanity, there is an evolutionary spiral of life that leans toward healing, that leans toward adapting, that leans toward correcting. When I fractured my foot, I, Wendy, do not need to know how to heal that. Life itself is designed to do that. We can get so busy dealing with the demands of living that sometimes we skim the surface of life. And when we're dealing with problems and chaos and uncertainty and challenges in our life, if we are just skimming the surface, it can be a pretty rough and scary place to be. If we can dip deep into wisdom, if we can dip deep into insight, we will find concepts and ideas that sustain us so we can move through that difficulty. Life is spiraling upward. Life is constantly attempting to improve itself. Are you with me? There is a whole field called evolutionary biology, and I first started to become a little bit acquainted with it in the late 1990s when we had invited some evolutionary biologists to be with us in our first synthesis dialogues with His Holiness the Dalai Lama in Dharamsala, India. It was then that I started to hear from scientists about some of these concepts that live in me today that deepen my own faith. I don't know what will deepen your own faith, but I really encourage you to try to find out. Another for me is what I think is the actual maturing of human consciousness. Now, I know right now it may not seem very evident that that's happening. And certainly in some places it seems to be lagging way behind. But I think if we step back far enough, we would see that as a whole, humanity is waking up a bit more. We're just really slow to wake up. But we are waking up a bit more. And I think it's important for people like us to not lose sight of that. And then as I was putting these pieces together and just challenging myself to say, what is it that helps me to maintain my faith when I look at things that trouble me or worry me or disturb me? I realized that essentially it's about taking the long, broad, and deep view of things. Let me repeat that. It's taking the long, broad, and deep view of things. And maybe that's something that begins to be a little bit easier to do when you've lived a few years and you've experienced a few things. And I think that's most of us in this room, quite honestly, that we are at a place in our life that we can more easily, with practice, to take the long, broad, and deep view. And so you see, when I'm talking about faith, I'm not talking about the kind of faith that I can remember being asked as an adolescent, what faith are you? And my answer at that time was Lutheran. That's what my family was. What faith are you? That is a faith that is belief holding. It's not a faith that is truth seeking. The faith that I think we live in an attempt to live from in unity is truth-seeking faith, spiritual-seeking faith, not just a Sunday faith, not just something that we come to a place like this on a Sunday morning to check the box and fill our obligation. It's not that. This is just, my dad used to call a unity service an attitude adjustment time, or a unity church an attitude adjustment center. We come to learn these things together, and once we've learned them, we don't leave. We stay in the teaching for the teaching to go deeper in us so that we can live it more consistently in our life, and hopefully by the way that we live our life and by the way that we meet difficulties and meet and welcome opportunities, that the way we live our life helps to be an inspiration to others that maybe there's a better way, or maybe there's at least a different way that's worth exploring. So there's a difference between just holding a set of beliefs under the banner of a particular faith and this living, future-proofing faith that I'm talking about. Just a couple more ideas to share with you. Strengthening your faith does not mean you will have more answers. Strengthening your faith does not mean you will have more answers. It means you will have less fear of the questions. Does not mean you're going to have more answers. It means you will have less fear of the questions. Some of us grew up in churches that didn't want us to ask any questions, right? We were criticized or made to feel unwelcome if we asked questions. A real faith means that we have less fear of the questions, that our faith is big enough to hold the questions. I remember hearing the Dalai Lama say, and it might have been at one of the synthesis dialogues, those of you who know anything about the Tibetan tradition and the role of the Dalai Lama, what you may or may not know about His Holiness the Dalai Lama is his love of science, very spiritual teacher and someone very widely studied and read and very much in love with science. And I remember him saying, if science ever proved a belief or a teaching that he held, if science ever proved it to be false, he would abandon the teaching or the truth. To me, that is a faith that is not afraid of the questions, and a faith that is big enough to hold answers that maybe we don't know just yet. Does that make sense? Does that make sense? So breathe in with me for a moment. And do kind of just a quick scan of your own life right now. A quick scan of what's up for you. And what's up for you may be very personal. It may be very particular to your set of experiences you're dealing with right now. Or your quick scan may be greater concern about the war in Iran and everything else that we're experiencing in the world right now. So it may be a much more global scan. But as you do that scan, ask yourself, where can you deepen your faith that the presence of Spirit is in that too, whatever it is? How can you hold a bigger faith, a bigger picture that allows for hospicing that which is dying, that which isn't working for you or for the world anymore, while at the same time holding the space, the trust, to midwife that something new is trying to come forth? That it's not things are falling apart. It's that things are opening up and something new is wanting to happen. Namaste.